All right, so today I wanted to start out by talking about propaganda. Now, there has been endless amounts of propaganda spewed at us, ever since this whole quote unquote pandemic situation has started, and even, well, actually, a lot of it was even before. But I wanted to talk about a couple textbook cases of propaganda that have been put out over the last week or so. And the first one here is this story from CTV, and it says it's exhausting. ICU nurse shares before and after photos of herself to show pandemic toll. Now, again, how does that mean anything? And here's the thing: like the first one is a picture. Now, again, when you, I don't know if this was at a school or what exactly it was for, but nonetheless, when you get a picture taken like that, especially for women, they usually dress up. I mean, they have makeup on, they usually do their hair. So you're going to look good. When you do your day to day job, especially when it's a job when your appearance is meaningless, of course you're not going to look as good. Like, again, this is like straight out of the Soviet Union levels of propaganda here, that it's designed to make people think that, oh, the hospitals are overwhelmed and, oh, we're all going to die. And it's just doomsday cult like paranoia, just sheer paranoia. And again, is there some healthcare workers that are probably having to work harder than normal? Is there some healthcare workers that are probably more stressed than normal? Absolutely. But the vast majority of the ones I've talked to and the vast majority of the ones I've seen online that isn't like, NDP union like propaganda, um, they say it's pretty much normal. In fact, I've talked to multiple, every person who works in the healthcare industry that I've talked to in person, which isn't that many, um, has said things are pretty much normal. Um, but again, none of them are working directly in like the ICU with virus patients or anything along those lines. But again, the thing to point out here is, I mean, I'll get to the next point here. Um, so this picture that was floated around of this guy who um, he apparently had to call someone and tell a photograph of Dr. Demers Marcil phoning a family to tell them that a loved one has died to the virus. Now, again, it's a terrible thing. People are dying. But here's the thing: all cause mortality in 2020 is the same as the average year. So again, this is just sheer propaganda to try and convince people that people are dying left, right, and center of the virus, when in reality, all cause mortality, it's a normal year. It is a normal year. In other words, doctor, this is something that they normally would be doing regardless of whether or not the virus is around, right? Because if this whole virus situation was so bad, or at the very least as bad as they would like to have you think, then all cause mortality should be up, but it isn't, right? Not even in Sweden. Even in Sweden, the country that the paranoid doomsday cult would have you think is the worst in the world, their all cause mortality isn't up either. In fact, I think it's slightly down, right? So this is something that really bothers me. And, I will acknowledge that there is some stress being caused within the industry, within people, with people that are, being affected by this. That definitely does exist, right? This is one of the many straw mans that the zealots would have you that like to throw out there is, oh, you think that the virus doesn't even exist. Well, I don't think anybody is saying that. Well, the argument has always been it's grossly overstated, at the very least overstated. So again, this is like I say, textbook propaganda. It's textbook propaganda. What is the goal of it? It's to try and convince people that, ooh, that we still need to be all scared and paranoid about this whole situation. And in reality, we don't. Right? And here's the thing: if this whole virus situation was as bad as they would like to have you think, then there would be no need for the propaganda. There would be no need for the lies, right? There would be no need for it. This is one of the many reasons that it isn't as bad, because if it was, they wouldn't have to give you crap like this. Like, this is, at the very least, incredibly misleading. Like, it's incredibly misleading. Like, where is the these kind of people posting about the people that have lost their businesses, right? Like, where's the people posting about the people that had to call their family members telling them that a family member committed suicide. But I know some people that have had to do this, right? I don't know anyone who's even caught the virus, right? Not even. I mean, actually, I do. A friend of a family member's friend. Like that's how far away I have to go to find someone that's got this, right? But again, I have family members that have committed suicide over this, right? It's terrible stuff. But again, is there anything being talked about like this? Are these idiot politicians bringing that stuff up? Well, no, of course they're not, right? Because the goal is to drive fear, drive panic, and because of that situation, the government can gain power, right? And that is the problem with government is that the solution is always to get bigger. It's never to get smaller. It's always to get bigger. So again, this is something that people really, really need to stay, stay vigilant for, right? Because again, I'm someone that most people I don't think are nearly as paranoid as what the news would have you think, right? Most people aren't. And here's the thing: a lot of people may buy into that, but they don't personally believe it, right? Like you have all these idiots that they're like, oh, well, we got to be locked down and all this stuff. But do they personally, do they have any skin in the game, right? Do they have any skin in the game? No, like I seen it's people, the people that want this stuff are people that, number one, they live in fantasy worlds, number one, because again, they think that the government can just pay people to not work, right? They can just pay people to not work. We can just pay business owners to pay their bills, right? But that's not how it works. We can't just print money endlessly to solve all our problems. So that we can't do it, right? It's not realistic. So again, that's the a big thing that I think people need to look out for. And the next story here is from the Edmonton Journal saying, unlikely to be sustainable. Auditor cautions city after operating spending increases sharply since 2000. Now let's read a little bit about it here and I'll talk about it. Edmonton's auditor is raising alarms over the city's steep increase in operating spending over the last 20 years. Spending for city services and programs has skyrocketed 36% above population growth and inflation between 2019 or sorry 2000 and 2019. In a financial review report discussed by councillors Tuesday morning, Auditor David Wynne, I don't know if that's how you pronounce that, but anyway, he said, sharp increase coupled with more tax-supported debt means the city's financial conditions is weaker than it was 20 years ago, although the sharp rise in spending can largely be attributed to operating more facilities. Wynne said this could pose a risk to the city's financial success in the long term. The growth trend is unlikely to be sustainable and is a risk to the city's financial condition, he said in his audit report. When operating spending increases more than inflation and population, this means the city must raise more revenue for each citizen, and the cost of services may eventually exceed citizens' ability to pay. Um, Operating spending increased to 2.5 billion from 830 million between that time, an increase of 207%. About 1 billion can be attributed to population growth and inflation as Edmonton's population rose by 50%. Over the past 20 years, salaries and benefits of City Edmonton employees have consistently accounted for the largest chunk of the budget, between 60 and 67% of total operating expenses. Wynne also flagged a 347% increase in long-term debt per capita since 2000, with most of it being paid through property taxes. Tax-supported debt grew to 2.7 billion last year from 83 million in 2000. That is insane. This means the city owes $3,124 per resident that will be required in future property taxes to overcome the debt. This growth in debt per capita increases the risk of overburdening the tax base, straining budget and tax resources, as well as reducing future flexibility. Wynne said in his report that the increase in tax supported debt is a risk because it represents a debt burden that must be paid through future taxes. As more tax revenue is used to service debt, less available to pay for municipal services and operations. So again, I'm not going to read the rest of the article. You can go check it out if you want. But in a nutshell, the city of Edmonton is on its way to going bankrupt. So they're not going to cut spending. That's something that I would pretty much guarantee. Because again, I mean, you've seen it for yourself. The salaries of these city employees accounts for 2/3 of that budget. And again, are these people ever going to vote to have their own salaries cut? Well, how insane do you have to be to suggest that? So the the spending is going to continue to have to go up, right? The spending is going to have to continue to go up, which means your taxes are going to be raised. And again, most people are already struggling financially these days. So yeah, that's not a very good sign for anyone living in Edmonton. And be prepared for future tax increases. Which again, the property taxes are already too high. Like they're already far too high. But nonetheless, and again, the last thing to talk about here is from Ezra Levant, saying we sent a reporter into Dominion Voting Systems head office, which just happened to be in Canada. Here's how that went. So again, Dominion Voting shares an office with far left George Soros linked group. Now again, like, I mean, this is something we already suspected, but yeah, this is anybody I think doesn't have skepticism when it comes to Dominion voting. It's like, at what point will you really? Like, at what point will you? And I think any election that Dominion voting systems have been used in said elections, I mean, I don't see how you can completely invalidate them, or at the very least, not use them in the future. I mean, when it comes to elections, there needs to be a way to or at the very least, there needs to be a full hand recount, a full audit of this kind of stuff. Because when you're relying on these systems, you can't rely on the systems because those are programmed by people, and they can easily be manipulated. So anyway, that's what I wanted to talk about today. If you liked the video, make sure you hit that like and subscribe. If you haven't already, make sure you check out those links below. Follow me on those other platforms. If you want to donate, you can do that as well. But at the very least, just hit that like and subscribe, and stay tuned for more.